is quiet as the Flyers get a victory.
Ackeberg missed the puck, or Leach rather, and so now you got a 2-on-1. And that was on the glove side high. Roenick was going down the other side, and I don't think Jeremy Roenick had any intentions of throwing that over.
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah, and I'm here with Chef B, who's going to tell us about one of our sponsors here. Chef?
Yeah, O&B Puckcast is now brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. The winter months can be especially hard on our homes, from roof damage and peeling siding to frozen pipes and toilet overflows. Call Summit Public Adjusters before you call your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be stressful and confusing. Let Summit Public Adjusters take the stress out of the claim process by having our guys work for you. Get the most for your money and your repairs. The next time the big snow or the rain leaves you with some home damage, contact us for a free consultation. Summit Public Adjusters are licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Learn more at summitpublicadjusters.com or call 215-752-0560. Just tell them that the chef sent you.
Yeah, what was that number again, Chef?
215-752-0560.
That's terrific. All right, we're going to carry on with the rest of our show. And we are back. It is Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 257. Brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com, Jim South Street, and Summit Adjusters. The Flyers are 2-2 in their last 4 games, which brings them to a record of 33-37 and 10 for 76 points. They are 5-1-1 under interim head coach Brad Shaw with 2 games left in the season. They're currently 5th, I believe, from the bottom and could still finish anywhere from 4th to 9th overall. Just as an aside, under interim coach Brad Shaw, they played 7 games, which I mentioned, they were going 5-1-1. They've scored 31 goals. Prior to that, in 12 games under John Tortorella, his last 12 games, they went 1-10-1 and scored 21 goals. So 10 more goals in 5 less games, and we know the results. This team is winning games, much to the chagrin of some of the Flyers faithful, at a time when losses might be better. But I think the decompression that the Flyers have had in the wake of John Tortorella's dismissal has been a positive thing, in at least in the short term. And let's bring in our panel. Obviously, tonight, we'd love to have the great Dan Silver, but he's on assignment. In fact, he's abroad. He is in Italy, I believe, Chef. So is he buongiorno?
Yeah, he's in Italy. He's enjoying like the sights of Rome right now. I think Sistine Chapel. He's been a couple other places. So that's great. But it's a shame because this is one of our favorite episodes. I love doing this with Steve every year. Twice a year I think we do this, and it's just so much fun. And he brings a valuable amount of information. He studies this for the whole damn year up to this point, and I always love it. It's one of my favorites, and I'm sure it's one of our listeners' favorites as well.
No doubt. Yeah. So without any further delay, let's bring in from the draftanalyst.substack.com our buddy Steve Kournianos. Steve, thanks for joining us tonight.
Isaiah, Chef, always a pleasure.
Yeah. So what about this Philadelphia Flyer club? Have you seen any of their games under Bradshaw and kind of contrasted in your mind what they were like under Tortorella? Just like a flash kind of reflex response, wow, it's just they're a little more free flowing, or what impression might have you have had?
Yeah, you said it. It's free flowing, and some might say that it's kind of like a knee jerk reaction to the new coach. Anytime you fire a coach, the players feel bad because they feel like it's their fault. No matter whether a coach is mean or not, and say whatever you want about John Tortorella, like clearly the guy cared. I don't think he was a bully to be a bully. Like he has a standard that was very high. He expected a lot out of his players. Doesn't matter whether they were young or old, well, at least to a degree. And so, like, sometimes tough love. I think we've all had people in our lives who were maybe at the time we thought of them as maybe being a little bit too pushy or aggressive, and then you're like, I really learned a lot from that guy. So that could be a situation. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure isn't like a John Tortorella, right? He's got probably a different leadership style, different coaching style. So the younger players might feel like the younger players might be more inclined to take chances because there's not going to be some type of for lack of a better term, ass chewing or yeah. So, and this happens also, like in the playoffs, you see it as well with teams sometimes where they're like, you know what, we're not going to be tentative. We're going to go and take chances. And sometimes that results in success. So I think that's my best explanation is that you still have a lot of young players. I think the whole world knows that the goaltending is not good. The whole world knows that there are no real star player, like veteran players on the team. The center ice is still a problem. The power play, still needs help. But, when you see a guy like Michkov kind of take off almost instantly with the coaching change, you have to say, well, is this what we're going to see next year? Is it the shape of things to come? Or is this just kind of like the typical end of season? We're fighting for jobs, we're playing for contracts, etc.
Yeah, it's kind of like a September baseball kind of response.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
You got to take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, Chef.
So my question would be this: obviously, one of the, if not the most important decision that Briere is going to make in the offseason, and Keith Jones and all that, is getting a new coach for this team. It's probably at the top of the list because I think we forget here that Briere and they inherited him when they inherited Torts. That wasn't their pick. So
yeah.
So now, like, if you're looking out there and the guy you want isn't available yet and might be available in a year or two, you keep the guy that's here now. You keep him just because is he able to be a bridge coach? I guess I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a good question because it's relevant to really any team that's in a similar position to the Flyers, is that this guy that you have in charge, right? Whether the team has made progress or they're regress, like in the Flyers case, albeit slightly. Do you see the person in, like, for example, like San Jose, right? Like they've made strides, right? A lot of their top players are young guys. I saw Logan Couture just announce his retirement, by the way. And I forgot his name, Worofsky. Is he the guy that's going to be there when they make the playoffs? And they will eventually. The Rangers, similar situation, right? They brought in David Quinn, right? They wrote the letter. They said, we're going to rebuild or we're going to unload all our veterans. They brought in David Quinn, who was a BU. He was a heralded college coach, right? He coached Eichel. He coached all these good future NHL players. And the way it briefed was like, well, he's going to help guide our young guys. And then by the time the Rangers looked like they were turning a corner, they basically got rid of him and brought in a more seasoned coach. So, it all depends on the names that the Flyers have in mind right now. And I'm sure they do. I'm sure there are guys in college. There are guys in the CHL. There are guys in the AHL. People look at the Capitals, but that was a veteran team to begin with. They went out and they loaded up on veterans. So Carberry, it was his turn, but he fell in on a veteran team. So David Carl, I'm sure he's a very popular name out there because he's done so well at Denver. He's won the gold medals with the World Junior program. So he's clearly going to be an NHL coach one day. But like I said on previous podcasts, that they tried this with Hackstall. And Hackstall came from the college ranks, and he hasn't had an easy time winning consistently in the NHL. So I really don't know which way they go. I think that if you stay with Shaw, you have the familiarity. I think it's pretty, and again, I really don't know this, so I don't want to say it's pretty obvious, but it seems to me like the Flyers are definitely willing to stink one more year, and I think it's because of Gavin McKenna for next year's draft. This is just my speculation. So if that's the case, why go out and get a new coach when you know that coach is going to have a tough time with it? They're not going to give him goaltending. But again, the flip side to that argument is you have him come in now. He gets to grow with the group. The leash is going to be long, and then take it from there. So it's not an optimal situation to have. I think if the Flyers improved this year and made the playoffs, the problem would be kind of solved because you'd keep Torts, right? They improved for a third straight year. They made the playoffs. They played young kids. They didn't add any salary. They still got better by unloading at the deadline, despite unloading at the deadline. But that's obviously not the case. So I definitely would not. I mean, I don't know what goes on in the room. I really don't. We all don't know what's being said privately. But I think this sample is going to be way too small.
Yeah.
To say like this is in terms of Shaw. So I'm sure they'll give him the chance to interview again and what have you. But I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. It all depends on who's available. Because remember, you got a lot of teams that are going to fire coaches, and it's going to be a competition. And so, the names out there, Joel Quenneville, is he going to be allowed to come back? And is that the kind of guy that the Flyers want to, help build this young core? I don't know. To be honest with you, I think Carl's the guy that everybody wants, but he hasn't made a decision yet whether he's staying or going.
Yeah. Follow up to that real fast would be like in Philly, we don't want a Brett Brown situation. You know what I mean? Like with the Sixers, because as soon as, the guy carries everybody all through how bad the Sixers are, you finally get Embiid, you finally get some players in here, and they throw the guy out, and then you've endured that culture of we're going to lose, we're losing culture, and now you see how hard it is for the Sixers to turn it around now, and I think that's a fear because the diehard Flyers fans are afraid of that situation.
Yeah, I think that considering that the Flyers are steadfast in their rebuild process, that I don't think this particular season coming up is a make or break one, long-term wise, in a way, you kind of could understand if they run it back with Shaw because of the fact that there's familiarity there. And the plan all along is to play young kids. And, and I'm not saying that is the plan, but let's say if it is, it seems like it's going to be. Again, my speculation that they are not going to spend this offseason, that although there are plenty of RFAs available, quality RFAs, you have some somewhat, big name UFA types. I think the Flyers are still this is only their third year, right? Well, next year will be their third year with Briere and Jones, right? I think they just finished their second full season. So they have a glide path, and I think that glide path that when you look at 25, 26, I don't think it includes maybe breaking the bank for a new head coach, because remember that if you hire a new head coach, you pay him a lot of money, whether he's a big name or not, the team is likely not going to be competitive. And there's that added pressure that the fans are still going to be upset. The media is still going to ask very tough questions. And is that the kind of environment you want this new coach to be in? Because even he might crack. So I don't know. It all depends. I'm thinking that they're looking at 26, 27, 27, 28 as when they're going to really get serious. Because right now they have tons of cap space coming up. I think they want to be really smart with how the organization spends their money.
Well, let me frame this a little differently. I think the concern when they look at a coach is when you go back to, what was it, 21? It was 19 or 21. When was
Vigneault?
Keith Yandel here? Was that 21? And
21.
He was saying, when he was saying that was one of the most enjoyable years, most fun years he ever had, on a team. And of course, they were horrendous. They were hideous. And
to interrupt you real quick, That's because like he was basically booted out of New York. So I think any place he went to, thereafter might have been. But again, I don't want to speak for Yandel. I'm just my speculation.
No, I think the thing was the atmosphere was such that they didn't really have an expectation, a so-called standard of play. They had bad habits, and they were out of control. They bring in Tortorella, and they kind of reinstill the culture that just a culture of expectation that you're not going to fall below a certain par. And they just never quit on Tortorella. Even as they were losing and all that, they were still blocking shots, and they were playing a really tough way to sustain when you don't have a lot of talent. So when they look at hiring another coach, a lot of it has to do with, Steve, like what you're talking about. Like, how ambitious are they going to be this offseason? And that, to me, will guide where they go, because I think they definitely want to address the goaltending. That came out. There was an article today by a columnist, Mike Sealski from the Inquirer, who said that someone in the Flyers organization who acknowledges that goaltending probably is the greatest need right now. And it's very difficult for them to evaluate how good their kids are, particularly on the back line, if you think every other shot has a possibility to go in. And they have some of the worst. I think they have the worst save percentage in the entire league. And overall,
it's been that way for a while too. It's been that way for a while.
Well, I mean, when you had Carter Hart and Ursan as a steady, 1B, they were actually pretty decent, And then all of a sudden Hart is gone. And since then, it's really, really been a weakness. So, and going into this year, it's really been, it's just a mess. There's really no other way to say it. The Kolosov situation is a soap opera unto itself. And Fedotov is a great story, but he's not an NHL goalie. So it looks like they have Urson as like a 1B candidate, and they want to go out and fix that. And then, of course, is get some kind of professional center here, even like a Band-Aid for a couple years until some kids that they draft have time to develop. And then, like you're saying, going into next year, then they'll have more cap space. They could be more liberal with their spending, and they'll have a better idea under better conditions what they have. So if that scenario plays out, do they stick with a Bradshaw? Do they go for a Rick Tocchet or a Todd Nelson, who might be a Spencer Carberry, clone, a guy who's won a lot at the lower levels, has NHL experience? David Carl, and of course, you can't leave out Pat Ferschweiler, who was Keith Jones' line mate back in their Western Michigan days.
Yeah.
And who just won an NCAA title and took a program that you would not associate with winning. And it's just unlike, BU, BC, Denver. I mean, these are powerhouses. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. What say you?
Well, I mean, I think that here's my problem with the way that Briere and Jones have operated is that I understand the whole rebuild thing. Nobody understands it more than myself, because all I do is track the draft and rebuilds. It's all I've been doing for like the last 10 years. So I get it. But the Eastern Conference has been ripe for all these teams to at least try to make a move, right? The Eastern Conference this year is terrible. I mean, I don't look at it. I mean, the Maple Leafs are the division winner in the Atlantic. The Capitals last year were, I think, minus 37 in goal differential. They got swept in the first round of the playoffs. They spent a ton of money, and now they're the best team in the conference. I mean, it's that type of weird year. So I was in the opinion that, hey, spend a couple of second or third or fourth round picks, get some more help. Again, if the plan is to do the opposite, I respect that. But from a financial standpoint, Philly fans deserve something, right? And like we got a taste of it last year. They came very close to making the playoffs. Would it have killed them to add one or two pieces, not long-term deals? At least use your pro scouting department. Try to go out and unearth some gems. Get a power play specialist here or there. Look at the goaltending moves that were made this season. Look at the
Colorado.
Yeah, a second and a fourth, a third and a fifth. Now, some people are adamantly against that, and again, I respect that. But from an ownership standpoint, why would you just completely wave the white flag in July when you know that you're probably one or two play? And listen, when you finish with a 500 record, 75, 79, 80 points, you're pretty much one or two players away, good players away from being a playoff team. And that's the way I look at it. Okay, the Flyers aren't an embarrassing team like the Red Wings in 2020 or the Canadians in 2022. This is a team that competes hard. They have good pieces. So I don't know. I mean, I think that whichever direction they go, they can't just keep beating up these goalies. They got to give them support. And it doesn't matter who the coach is. The coach is not going to fix goaltending. It's just the reality of it. You need a pro level number one, whether he be 35 years. How many times have we seen a 35, 37-year-old goalie come out of nowhere and lead a team to a playoff round or two? Why can't the Flyers at least try to do that? They haven't. They have not tried to do that. They lost Carter Hart for obvious reasons, and they have not tried to replace him. They tried to do it internally, and it just did not work. It's like you said, combined save percentage is the worst in the NHL, I think, since 2021 or 22, and they refuse to fix it. So I guess they're waiting on their guys to hit in the system.
Well, they acknowledge it now. We'll see what they do. It's going to be very difficult for them to address that. I mean, maybe a guy like, I don't know, where's he playing? Where's Jake Allen? Is Jake Allen in Montreal or is he in New Jersey?
Is he the Devils backup?
I think he's the Devils.
I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you mentioned like a veteran goalie. Look what Anderson did for Carolina a couple years ago. That's just one example there.
I mean, Dwayne Rollinson in the freaking 2006 playoffs. I mean, he basically got Edmonton all the way to the Cup. Just someone. The Hamburglar. The Hamburglar came out of nowhere. It was like 24-2 or whatever that was way back when. So I know that it briefs well if you say, well, we have like Binnington, right? Binnington came out of nowhere. He was a prospect at the time, or for a while. He was in the AHL. He shows up to the Blues and he wins a cup. And every team is like, well, why can't we do that? We could be able to do the same. Doesn't always work out that way. So I understand the Flyers have addressed goaltending. I like the fact that they've, for lack of a better term, exposed Kolosov and Fedotov. See what they got. It's totally fine with that. But, the guy I really feel bad for is Urson, because he was really shoved into this meat grinder. And, it's not fair to the kid, because I think he has the makings of a really good NHL number one. And you got to be careful, too, because if you give up on him or if his morale gets beat down, you're going to have a situation like, let's say, Ullmark in Buffalo, where, he was like, where's this team going? They're going nowhere. All right, I'm going to go sign with the Bruins. The guy wins a Vezina, and now he's a zillionaire. So, I just don't like when a team is so – to me, making the playoffs is what you want. We all know as sports fans, when your team makes the playoffs, whether it's one game or 5 games or 10 games, it's just the feel, the validation of that whole seasons of work, right? The off season, the training camps, the trades, the waivers, the free agency, the prospects who come up and contribute. When you make the playoffs, whether you're a 1 seed or an 8 seed, that is validation in one form or another. And I don't agree with being this close. You're saying, we'll just screw it. But again, if the intent is to get a ton of high draft picks and, top 5 draft picks, be in the McKenna sweepstakes, being in the Landon DuPont sweepstakes, that's how Pittsburgh built their, mini dynasty. That's how Washington built their perennial contender. That's how Chicago. I mean, it's how they were built through the draft.
Right. It's right. That is the counterpoint. I mean, Jake Allen is the backup in New Jersey, and to the injured Jacob Markstrom. But so that it's something they're going to have to consider, and they need to add a center. There's no doubt about that. But that is the offseason, and that's to me that is the pivot point by which they choose their coach. If they have a certain plan and they think they can identify a couple players to move them up a notch where they could make a playoff run, and they think at this point it would be toxic for them not to try to go for it. Because last year, if they have heart and they don't trade Sean Walker, they probably make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Oh, might even win a round.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
he's big enough to steal a game for you and a series. So,
Well,
I think one thing is certain,
yeah.
though. One thing is definitely certain. I don't think they're going to bring in a veteran coach, though. I think it's going to be they're going to take a page out of some of the other teams around the league who are rebuilding, whether it be, I know you see you got like Everson. He's definitely made a difference. Is it Columbus, right? Where they had tragedy. They had a significant tragedy. They had a lot of young players. I would say not as they were more far along than what the Flyers had. But they had the crisis, right? Not only did they have a crisis, the tragedy, but they also had the crisis with Babcock. And they had the year before, they had to bring in the new coach,
right?
And then they got rid of him, and then so Everson was available, and now you like to think that he made a difference with them, and they're a competitive team to a degree. So I think that they're going to look at some veteran options, but for the most part, it's I think a foregone conclusion that they're going to bring in a younger, let's say more progressive, youth leaning kind of a guy to lead them forward. Now, the question is that going to be a guy like Brad Shaw, right? You hired him from within, and that's going to be his MO moving forward in the NHL, or do they go out and get someone from, like you said, the AHL or CHL or assistant ranks?
Yeah, we just have to see that. I mean, Brad Shaw really hasn't had that chance, but he's 60, but he's considered a guy that hasn't been weather beaten by his NHL.
When I say young, I mean like, young and experienced.
Right. Gotcha. Just trying to clarify that for the listeners, because they carp at you. I get it in the comments all the time. How could Steve say this? Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I just meant like experience-wise, like someone who hasn't, let's say, developed a reputation that might be considered toxic or overbearing. So that's what I meant. Yeah.
Right. No, I hear you.
I remember Brad Shaw when he played in the NHL. So I know, I definitely remember. I think he played for the Whalers, if I recall correctly. That's how I'm dating myself.
Yeah. I think the leader in the clubhouse is Rick Tocchet, but that's just rumor. I don't know. So we'll see. So why don't we talk about some of these kids that the Flyers have under contract or about to have under contract or part of their organization in some form or fashion. Why don't we start with a guy who's getting a lot of hype right now? We're going to go kind of like quasi ascending order, but I'm going to make the exception with Alex Bump coming off. I thought he was very impressive, and it was held scoreless in the tournament from Western Michigan. He was really noticeable out there. And I know you deserve a lot of credit because you identified him back when he was drafted as somebody you thought had a real NHL future, unlike most players drafted. What was their fifth rounder? It's pretty rare. And now he looks more like a second rounder.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Bump, you hit the nail on the head because, like you said, he didn't score, but he looked good. And that's what I really care about when I evaluate kids. The stats are nice, right? Look at a guy who's leading his team in scoring. To me, that's just part of the equation. If you look good every night and you get your chances, right? How many times have we watched our teams play and, you got to look at it like walking down the street, you bump into a buddy and he's like, hey, I had the team play last night. You're going to be honest and be like in a couple of seconds say, they played like crap, but, they still won, or, man, the other goalie was just phenomenal. And they'll say, well, who played well? You're not going to say who had the most shots on goal. You're going to say, well, I think X, Y, and Z played really well. Well, that's kind of like what Bump is. Bump is the kind of guy that he's going to get his chances, right? How does he get his chances? It's a combination of things. It's a combination of his IQ, which is very high. It's a combination. It includes the threat that he presents that teams know that they have to worry about him. But because he's a good playmaker, it opens up the ice and he knows how to find them. So just having him on the ice, Western Michigan, to me, he was their best player, not necessarily in the championship game because it was more like a scoring by committee. But throughout this run that they've had, he has been the guy that the other teams have to worry about the most because once he's close to the circles and the puck is on his stick, the goalie's on notice, the defensemen are on notice, the forwards are on notice. So that, Kaprizov was the same way. He's a 5th round pick. Kaprizov was the same way in 2015. Now, 2015 was a loaded draft, and you had the whole Russian factor. But he was the kind of player where you're like, every time he's got the puck, it seems like everybody's reacting to it, and it's causing confusion. And that's what Bump did it in high school. He did it in the USHL. He's doing it in college, and he's probably going to do it in the AHL and eventually in the NHL as well. So, I want to say he's ready physically, he's ready mentally, he's ready skill-wise, but the question now is really, what do we see him becoming in 5 years? Is there enough room for him to be utilized properly? Is he going to be able to overtake Tuamala? And is he going to be able to, let's say, overtake like a Barkey or someone? There's going to be, this Flyers have drafted more wings than any other position in the last, I think, 6 or 7 drafts combined. Like, it goes, I think, wings 1, defense 2, and then centers 3. So there's a lot of competition, and we've known this for a while. So Bump's going to have his work cut out for him, but, I kind of like his odds.
Do you think that he has he's like a mid-6 with a pretty high floor? In other words, he should make the league. He should get his 200-plus games in, but he might, and then from there, it's up to him in terms of how hard he works, or is it that kind of scenario?
Well, he's going to work hard. I don't think it's an issue about, he said it publicly how mad he was about going in the 5th round. And I had him ranked, like 35th to 38th. And it was just because he abused people at the high school level. And if he was like 6'5", 220, then I'd say, okay, he abused high school players because he's got a significant size advantage. But he's only listed at 6 foot. But although he plays, he looks like he's more imposing. But it was more like the IQ, the creativity, the timing. Like, he just knew when momentum was changing. And if it wasn't, he wasn't involving himself in that momentum change, he was causing the change by himself. And that's something that you don't see often. And the thing is, he was in Class 2A, not Class 1A in Minnesota. So that's the tougher bracket. And so I think any coach that tries to make him a checker, we should tar and feather him. He should not be a checker, right? You want him when you promote. You do. It is my opinion. You do either one of two things with Bump. You either automatically give him a top 6 role in the AHL. You'd say, Anthony Richard, all you guys, freaking thank you, but move on. And you say, you know what, he deserves it. We're going to give him a shot and see if he's able to hold on to that at the AHL level, and then let him go to camp. And same thing with the NHL. Like, nothing lower than a third line wing. Do not put him on the 4th line. Don't play him 6 minutes. You're not gonna maximize his abilities, I think. So it's like Mitchkov, right? Like, you're not gonna put. I mean, I know they tried to with Torts and. But still, like, you don't want Mitchkov playing 9 to 12 minutes a game. You want him playing 16, 17, 18. Let him run loose. And I think the kids are going to reward them for that. They're not going to be selfish and puck hog. The veterans will make sure they stay in line.
Right. Last thing about Bump, a question. His speed is, I get mixed reactions. His speed is adequate. His speed is fine. He could really use another step. That one of the problems he has is that he doesn't have separation, and that's why he's not getting those scoring chances in big games like in the tournament. Well, what do you say about his? Is that a big area for improvement, or it's?
No, I wouldn't worry about it. First of all, look at the teams he was playing against. I mean, these are teams loaded with elite everything: elite goalies, elite defensemen, elite forwards. I mean, it's like basically watching a 7-game playoff series, right? You're not going to have a game unless it's like Gretzky or Lemieux or Crosby. There's not going to be a game every single game with the top players. How many times have you seen your top players be like, he was invisible today? It happens. So it's not like I don't think it's a situation of Bump not having separation speed. It's a collective team effort against the other team. And the other thing about Bump is you think BU and teams like when Boston College played them early, they're not like, all right, in our pre-scout, who are we going to stop? Bump. That guy, stop him, double team him. And that's been the case in Bump's entire career. He's always double teamed. So I wouldn't. they're going to improve their skating. The play development types are going to help him work out anything he needs. The reality is that he is lethal from just about anywhere, whether he's standing still, off the rush, behind the net, in the slot, and the high slot. You got to worry about him at all times. So the game isn't really played. The game isn't always played like a track meet. Okay, we all know that things tighten up as the season progresses. So I don't think it's a concern at all. I mean, is Draisaitl a freaking speed demon? I mean, no. It just doesn't. It doesn't really. I don't think it's going to impact whether he sinks or swims. I think it's going to be more along the lines of opportunity. Is he converting his chances? Is he using his line mates? Is he making smart decisions with the puck? Is he contributing to the defensive zone? Little things like that are way more important than straight line speed.
Gotcha. Chef, you have Carson, Dorwart, and a couple other players.
Yeah. So, one thing about Bump, though, I will say this. In address to his speed, I think his hockey IQ will probably cover most of that. He's going to go to where the puck is going to be, not to where it's been or where he thinks. So I think that'll free him up. And I don't know if Isaiah saw. I mean, the one game alone, I think the last game, he had like 7 shots on net, 6 or 7 shots on net or attempted shots. So whatever that stat is, I mean, it's not like he wasn't. So, but anyway, to Carson DeWart, I mean, what can you tell us about the newly acquired college guy? I mean, he was all right in his Flyers debut. I mean, he was a little noticeable, but I'm sure, the second game, it kind of looked like it was a little overwhelming. What can you tell us?
Well, I mean, he's a guy, listen, anytime you go from whether it be college or the AHL or junior or Europe to the NHL, like that's a huge jump. I mean, we're seeing Luchenko right now. The jump from the OHL to the AHL is significant, right? And so he's still trying to adapt to that. He also had a 9-game cup of coffee. I think it was 9 games at the beginning of the season. Yep. So we can't really look at like the first 2 games. You know what I mean? With Mitch Cove, I guess we got lucky in that he showed up and almost instantly he was opening eyes and producing. So that kind of helped it out. When he struggled, you're like, well, we know what he can do. I think a guy like Dorwart, you're getting him to be tougher to play against. That's really, I don't think you're getting him, although he does have a lot, I think he's got a pretty diverse skill set, right? He could be a finisher, a net front guy, he could be a playmaker, very good hands. He's good handling the puck. You got to give this kid a chance to adapt to the league and then adapt to how the league adapts to him. This is a long-term process. It involves player development. He just joined the Flyers, so it's not like he was drafted by them and he's been to camps and he knows the staff. He knows the facilities. He doesn't know anything. I mean, he really just finished the season not too long ago. So you have to factor in that whether it be one thing I know, so all these kids do, they're scared to do something with the puck. So it's basically not necessarily like treating it like a hand grenade, but it's like once it's on their stick, they're going to dump it in as soon as they get a chance and go for a change. So I don't have a problem with that. But he is a guy that was really critical to Michigan State's success. And so I like the fact you could consider him more like a similar play to like a Jack Berglund, who the Flyers drafted last year, like a big center who's, got 200-foot acumen. But I think the way we should look at Dorwart is more like making Lehigh Valley more competitive. And maybe a byproduct out of that will be that his physicality, his size, and the experience playing for a high-stakes program like Michigan State will, give him an advantage over, let's say, some of the smaller or less experienced. Because he's an older guy, too. He's like, I think, 23 or 20. Yeah. He's like 23 or 24. So.
Well, also, too, they must like him. They need a center, and I think they burn 1 year of his ELC to keep get him on here. So yeah. I'm happy about that. I mean, if they see something in him, let's give him a chance. All right, let's talk about the next guy. Let's talk about forecheck, backcheck, paycheck. And I think he's going to be one. He's at least going to be entertainment, and 2. I think he's got some of the skills to actually lend itself to the NHL level. What's your opinion?
Who are we talking about?
Grebenkin?
Gurbenkin.
Okay, so yeah, he was a guy that the Maple Leafs probably, I'm going to assume that the Maple Leafs did not want to get rid of him. That he was one of the guys that I could see. And I didn't really read all the quotes from the GMs on either side what happened, but in following him in the Russian League, in following him in his with the Marlies, that he was a guy that was very versatile, effective. He offered like a very diverse skill set, and so it ties into what I said about making Lehigh Valley more competitive. So I know that you got LaPerriere down there, and he's always going to have his favorites. He's got, they have to. I don't want to say they have to, but it would be nice if there's always going to be a mix of AHL veterans / career minor leaguers. I don't think that's really conducive during a rebuild. I think you should have an overwhelming majority of prospects with veteran support instead of like a balance. You know what I mean? I want, if I'm rebuilding, I want to see like San Jose, for example, they had a similar situation in with the Barracuda where they had all these they're not going to be with your organization. So I understand that you want the local community to see a competitive hockey team at the AHL level, like Hershey, right? Hershey always has veterans, but Grebenkin is a guy that I think he's even had NHL experience already. So think about that.
Yeah.
He was an overage, drafted as an overager. And then within a matter of 2 seasons, I think he's in the NHL. And it wasn't like a situation where we want to give him a chance because, we want to help his confidence. Like, no, he played himself into that position. And, he's got NHL like characteristics. I think it goes beyond just being good and competitive and making the Lehigh Valley team better. I think he has he probably wants to become a full-time NHL player.
Yeah. Admittingly, I don't know much about Ilya Poltov.
Yeah.
What can you enlighten us with?
Well, I just watched the series with Ska 46, and they were a little over. That team was a little over. His team, Krasnaya Armia, was a little overmatched. Now, to be fair, Pyotov's team was definitely on the younger side, whereas Ska 46. They, for the first time in a while, that they really they didn't have many 18 or 17-year-olds. They had a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds, and you saw that in the play. So with that type of mismatch, a top line guy like Pautov, his center Frolov, they try to do a lot, and they really couldn't. Like Scott 46's defense is really good. So I think for him, we all know about his dynamism. He definitely tries to create offense on his own against lesser competition. It's pretty effortless. Against tougher competition, it becomes more of a work in progress. You want to see him do more things IQ related and refine, or let's say adjust his game against tougher competition, more chips and chases, throw his weight around. But with these young Russian kids, a lot of the European kids will always defer to skill. And that was really his role for that team this year. He was one of the top players on the team. He was a top line guy. But like I said, to use the NHL playoffs as an example, it's like the top line of a mediocre team or a bubble team that makes it getting completely shut down by the President's Trophy winners in round one. You're not going to. It happens frequently. So that situation with Pautov, it's going to be he's a long-term guy. He's not very big. I don't know if he's going to automatically go to Zvezda Chekhov, whatever the VHL team is for Siska's, for the Siska organization. But there is a situation where I do think in terms of pure skill, just pure skill, that he has to rank up there, rank pretty high among Flyer wingers in terms of upside. But again, I want to see him try to have more of a North American style game. But then the Flyers are probably going to let him know if they haven't already done so. But yeah, he's an exciting guy. Just like I said, he was good all season up until he ran into this superior opponent.
Mm-hmm. Well, his would you say Gurbenkin has greater NHL possibilities
Oh
there?
yeah, yeah,
Could,
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I
and
mean, the
Potop
thing is,
is
though, he was older. It's just that even when he played, Stanley Lisi's it was always been a really good team, one of my favorite teams. So I knew a lot about him. Danila Yurov played with him, a top prospect from Minnesota, who we're still waiting for him to come to the NHL. I mean, but anyway, that's a situation where he's the age and the experience at the showing that he could hang in the AHL is a huge deal to me. It's always been a huge deal to me. It's how I rate my prospects. If you could hang in the AHL early on, I don't care where you were drafted. I will always take the 6th rounder who could hang with guys who are 25, 30, 35, trying to make a paycheck for their families versus the 2nd rounder who's just completely tearing it up in his 4th year in the CHL or the, some other junior league. So,
right. So maybe Potop is a little bit of a long shot to be.
oh yeah, well, yeah, he's a 6th-round pick too, so he's a long shot to begin with. But again, the overriding factor I think is going to be the skill. Like if they finally get him to cross the pond, could he have? Let's say if he's a right wing, could he have chemistry with Michkov? Would they get along together? I mean, again, like maybe they form an all Russian line. Maybe you try to have one of them play center, and
Yeah, I hear you. So the Flyers signed Ty Murchison, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
He's a defensive defenseman.
Yeah, physical guy, NCDP quality. He was drafted out of the program. I think he did 4 full NCAA seasons, so he waited it out. It was a smart decision. They could have easily said no and let him become a free agent and sign elsewhere. But like we said with Yuriv and Vasily on their podcast, that it could be a situation like a Hunter McDonald, where not very heralded. I will say that Murchison being on the NCDP in itself makes him more notable with the higher projected ceiling at the time he was drafted. So like, although he wasn't the let's say the driving force on the NTDP on the back end, he was more like a momentum changing guy. So you get him in the 5th round. If I recall correctly, the Flyers were in that like, let's beef up our defensive pool in those draft years, like the 20, at least 21, because I think 20 they just drafted another forwards. Andrea. I forgot about Andrea. But anyway, right. So I think Murchison, the fact that he was able to not only survive, but be given a contract. Well, I think, is it an ATO? I don't know if it's like a full-time deal, but it could be a Hunter McDonald situation where you have a physical kid who's fairly mobile. I don't think you're going to get much offense out of him. Maybe they view him as I forgot if he's a lefty or a righty, but
he's a lefty, yeah.
Okay, so Yinning, right? Well, what's Yinning's Ginning? His MO is physicality, size, slot protection, net front presence, or net front crease clearing. So that's the kind of guy, open ice hitting. Maybe like when it's time to say goodbye to Mr. Yinning, they have Murchison step in and fill that role.
Yeah, Murchison got a deal that starts next year for 2 years.
Okay, so he got a deal then. All right, yeah.
Right,
yeah. But physical, shot blocking. I mean, he's kind of a Torts LePerrier kind of a guy. So, but I think the physical intimidation is real with him. You got to have your head in a swivel when you're on. If you're controlling the puck near him, he'll freaking light you up.
Gotcha. So he's more like organizational depth, not really maybe.
Yeah. But again, like you look at a guy like I'm going to use an example off the top of my head, like Tyler Tucker in St. Louis. I think he was like a 7th round pick, but in the OHL, I believe he was teammates with Forster and Barry. He had a reputation of being like a big open ice hitter, and you would say, well, he's a 7th round pick. The kid was able to play his way to get some NHL action. So you can't close the book on a guy like Murchison just because he was a 5th round pick who didn't join the organization until after 4 years of college.
Yeah, I mean, he could get some pro instruction, and that could be, all the difference for him. Alexis Gendron, another guy I'd look at from my perspective is someone who's kind of like a tweener, and he has to, but he has his moments.
Well, he was a late round pick. The thing about him was that he had he has a fantastic finishing touch, and he's got a pretty good shot and release. So, although that they don't need wingers, and you wonder, like, when they drafted him, was it because they may have, like, let's say, been as a contingency, let's say, for like if Wisdom or Connor McLennan, who they didn't end up signing,
Right.
Didn't like pan out. So you just bring another guy. He's not very big, but he's built. He's like a strong guy. And listen, this kid lit up the Quebec League. A lot of players can do that, but since he's come over to the AHL, you're seeing flashes, right? And not he hasn't been in the AHL that long. I mean, so he turns 20. I think he recently turned 21. So he's 22 by next season.
21,
that's still
he's 21 now.
Yeah, so that's still a pretty young age. And like anytime that you score 20 goals in your first AHL season and you're a late round pick and you're under 22 years old, that's a pretty nice feather in his cap. So with him, it's almost like he's like a poor man's Mitch Korb, because the shot and the release is similar to Bump as well from that circle is a deadly asset for the organization to have. So he's a trigger pull. He's a trigger pull, that's for sure.
So,
yeah, sure.
Question. Yeah, could he be like you said earlier? You're going to have to field an AHL team, and we've always said that on this podcast. That the better that the Phantoms are, the better the whole organization is, because you're generating word of mouth, you're selling tickets and all that. But could he be like a Carson Tawinski, Connor Bunneman? These guys come up for 10, 15 games, maybe a season, to fill in when people are hurt, that kind of thing, from what we saw in the past. Admittingly, the Flyers haven't had any like regular AHLers that could fill in for those spots in a couple of years now.
Well, the thing I like about Gendron is that he plays with bite. So if he's not scoring, he could be a contributor in like on a checking line. Because how many checkers have we seen come out of the Canadian Major Junior that put up big numbers, but they make a career out of being a support type, right? Not necessarily scoring. So I think that I'm going to speculate that LaPerriere loves him, because not only does he play him often, he's scoring. He's French Canadian.
Got the Cy Young thing going.
Yeah. So I think that it doesn't seem like we can tell when the Flyers are high on a kid beyond, let's say, like pre-contract hype, or like it's like it doesn't seem like the Flyers really pump up their kids like other organizations, like the Torontos in Montreal. Everyone's going to be a star. Everyone's going to blah blah blah. If they don't, you stink. It seems
especially
like
Montreal.
Yeah, usually with the Flyers, like you can just tell by the way that they promote their kids, by the way that they give them contracts. Fans, I think Flyers fans should be less surprised than the average NHL fan when it comes to later round guys making the jump and making an impression. That I like the fact that it's not like we're just going to give the higher round picks. It's it's part of the whole rebuilding process. But I think a guy like him can show up and make people, let's say, play better. Not necessarily because he's going to make them play better, but he's like a threat to their chances at securing a spot.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, he's got 20 goals in 62 games. Only 8 assists, so he's a gunner, right? He's
well, you got to worry about. So here's the thing: it's always a push and pull. Like he had his like Desnoyers, right? Desnoyers impressed, and then he, so it's like next year will be. I think the Flyers, and again speculating, I think the Flyers are going to wait to see. They want like him to replicate or improve upon what he did this past season. They'll give him pointers to work on, become a more well-rounded player. But, like I said, the Flyers have given these young kids opportunities before. So if next year is going to be even worse than this year, if the intent really is to sink it all for the chance at McKenna, you're going to probably see Gendron in the NHL next season. Absolutely.
Interesting. I'm going to take one more, and then Chef, you can take the next batch. Helga Grans. He had a cup of coffee here earlier in the season. He seems like he's improved, but I don't know how much of a chance he's going to get with this organization unless they do a sweep out of somebody like Ristolainen.
Well, you got a big right shot D who's fairly mobile, intermittent offensive abilities, good first pass. I've never really been his biggest supporter, but the move to Philadelphia seems to have helped him out. I forgot who drafted. I think was it the Kings?
Yeah, the Kings
drafted him originally, and then he was involved in the trade involving was it Walker?
Provorov. It was like a three-way and
the Provorov thing with the goalie, coming back. Right. So I think he's a second round pick. Central Scouting was very high on him. He's got familiarity with Andre, so maybe that was part of it too. Could they maybe one day form a pairing at the NHL level? He actually didn't look that bad. The few times I saw him play in the NHL, I'm like, whoa, did I miss this one? But consistency, I think he's dealt with some injuries too. I don't know if he's a long-term guy. They have some right shot D coming in the system. So we really have to, with all these CHL guys that are going to graduate, I think Southern is a right D, Bonk is a right D, Mateo Mann is a right D. So, it's going to be a pretty intense competition for AHL playing time. The good news is that, remember, the Flyers were rotating number 6 and number 7 defensemen nonstop for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So, I think he's just part of that group, right? That you give him a shot. But I have a feeling when the Flyers are good again, we're not going to see him in their lineup.
Gotcha. Chef?
Okay. So next we already mentioned him. So if you want to delve into a little bit, Elliot does. Whatever.
Desnoyers. Okay. So Desnoyers, 2020 draft. I think it was the last guy that they took, or maybe the second to last guy, because I always get confused with who went first, McLennan or Desnoyers. But with him, he got a small little taste of NHL action. I thought he deserved it because he played really well with Lehigh Valley that first year. And now what you're getting from him is, I think, quality defensive play. You're not seeing the offense. We thought that, it's almost a similar situation to Gendron where, rookie year, he's producing in the AHL. Like, oh my God, this is the beginning of a great story. And I think it's going to get even tighter, similar to Grans, with all these kids coming in, right? Barkey's going to be coming in, Bump's coming in, Cole Knubel's going to be coming in eventually. Like, all these guys are going to be coming in. So where does that put a guy like a Desnoyers, who's a center? I don't know if he's been playing mostly center or wing with Lehigh Valley, but I know he was drafted as a wing. The key thing with him, I don't mean to jump the gun a little bit, but is his brother. His brother is a top 10 caliber draft pick, and it might, you know what I mean? The Flyers might be in on drafting his brother. So, it might work out as a benefit, but I don't know. I think he's a smaller guy. It seems like there are a lot of players like his type within the organization.
Yeah.
So, the regression though from potential, third line NHL type, like a maybe even like a Cates, to now you're worried about him lasting in the organization. It all, like I said, it all depends on how the depth chart shapes out in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. Next one, how about Hunter McDonald? I mean, we mentioned briefly, but he's a big guy. I think they were really high on him at the beginning.
Well, they
and
signed.
I
Yeah, they
don't know if
signed
he's
him.
Just, huh?
They
Yeah,
signed.
and-
They gave him a
yeah,
contract.
so-
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like, there's not a lot of talk about him anymore in the organization that we hear about. So I was just wondering, was he the shiny new toy? Because they were getting, let's face it, the Flyers get bullied around a little bit, and that's not the history of this franchise. They got a lot of undersized defensemen. As much as I like him, Emil Andre, he tries to play bigger, but I'm gonna guess that he's going to be hurt more than he's going to be on the roster in the future. But so was it a knee jerk reaction to pick up Hunter McDonald as if you're looking down the line?
I mean, he was a 6th-round pick, right? So it's like you got a 6th-round pick, Northeastern guy, and that's my alma mater. So I'm like a big, obviously I'm gonna, kind of hope that he succeeds. You know what I mean? But what he was with the Huskies is the same thing as what he's really. He is a mean, intimidating guy. He's got length. He's got reach. He's a shot blocker, PK1. So I think, I mean, they call this the new era of orange. But what exactly does that mean? Like, what's going to be the team identity? On the Torts and LaPerriere, you could say it's going to be in your face, aggressive, physical, wave after wave of an intense forward check, make the opposition pay for every square inch of real estate. So McDonald's that kind of guy. So listen, I mean, this was his first full AHL season in Lehigh Valley, and he's a top 4 guy. I mean, he's a guy that they play a lot and they use him a lot, and he like I'm going to assume the teammates love him because you cannot breathe near the goalie without him stepping in. So the discipline issue, he's always had a discipline issue. He takes bad penalties. He's always done that. But it's like a give or take. It's like, well, if you want to send a message to the opposition, like, hey, you can't mess with us. Yeah, how many times? What usually happens when a team can't score with just pure skill alone? They'll always say, jam the net front, throw it at the net, make life difficult for the goalie. Jam the net, throw it to front of the net, make life difficult for the goalie. Well, you got to counteract that, and a guy like McDonald does that. So again, but just he takes bad penalty. He takes bad penalties. So it's kind of like he's a good penalty killer, but he's always in the box. So
okay, the next person who I really I think the Flyers are going to have a really a good one, a good pick out of this. Heike Ruhanen.
Yep.
I think he's going to be. I think he's somebody they've been looking for in a center. It's going to take a year or two more for him to blossom. He had a great championships. I think he was. He played very well. He was. I agree. He's actually bigger than I thought he was. And so I think maybe he's only 18. I think 18, 19, might be 19 now. But there's a chance that he could get bigger, right?
Yeah, he is a very tough competitor, very driven. He played top line center in Finland last year. He was a dedicated top 6 this year in the USHL. He's going to go to Harvard. So like you might say like, well, look where he was drafted. I think it was a 4th-round pick. He's going to go to college. I think this kid might be like, he's going to go to Harvard. He's going to probably want to get some type of educational benefit by going to an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be that guy and say, well, he's going to go to an Ivy League school, so he's going to definitely stay there until he gets his degree. He can finish his degree anytime he wants. Yeah. Right? Harvard brought him in because he's got good character, he's got good grades, and he's a hell of a hockey player. So he's going to be, I see him, I would say by his sophomore year, he'll be a top 6 NCAA center. And now remember, the ECAC is not a high-scoring – I mean, really, there aren't any high-scoring conferences in college hockey. Like, goals per game in college hockey is way, way, way lower than what it is in the CHL. But he plays a heavy game. He could be a playmaker. You always see him battling. He's always fighting and battling and, using his weight, like digging in escape blades and freaking – knocking guys into the boards with a stiff shoulder from a standstill. So he's like a tank, but he's also got a lot of skill too. So I watched him play a lot in his draft year in Finland. For it wasn't really a loaded program. It was Kiko Espu, U20. He was their best player. And so I think that's probably what was part of the appeal for the Flyers when they drafted him. But yeah, he had a really good year in the USHL. Like you said, very, very relevant performance for Finland. Remember, they weren't supposed to do well. Everyone was down on Finnish hockey, and they almost won the freaking gold.
Except you had them. You said watch out that they could surprise. I remember you saying that.
Yeah, but that was a lot of it was because of I knew the players that they added. I knew them almost intimately because of how they played in the Finnish Junior League. And Rohonen was the kind of guy. Listen, you evaluate plays. Some might say you got to watch a kid 30, 40, 50, 60 times. I watched that kid one time. I'm like, I don't really need to see him again. I really need to see him again because he really impressed me that one time. And by the way, Bill Walsh, the great architect of the Niners dynasty, he was the same way. He was like, his scouts used to get mad at him that he would say, he saw Rathman once. I think it was Rathman. That's it. He's good enough for me. So, sometimes he was one of my favorite. He's definitely one of my most favorite Flyer picks in the last couple of years. So I agree with what you're saying about him having some pretty high potential beyond just, putting up numbers in college or junior hockey.
Yeah. Now he looks like he does have an NHL future of it's just a matter of, at what level.
Yeah. He's going to be a tough matchup at the camps. He will be. He is not going to be like in awe of the higher rated guys or the veteran, AHL. I mean, he's the kind of guy that's going to go really toe to toe. If he's at the NHL camp, he'll go toe to toe with the most experienced Couturier, Konechny. He won't care.
Yeah, it's a battler out there, no doubt about it. So Cole Knuble came into his own a little bit this year.
A lot of it.
Yeah. Every area of his game improved. He's about 5'11", 190. What do you think his prospects are in terms of AHL, NHL, looking 5 years down the road?
I mean, it definitely helps having, NHL bloodlines and that his dad played for the organization. His dad was a pretty good NHL player himself, Mike Knuble. But this kid improves every year. And this year was, if Notre Dame, they had a lot of bad luck this year. The record was terrible, but I think they played a lot better than their record indicated. Some might say that the upsets that they pulled later in the year had more to do with their head coach retiring, Jeff Jackson, one of the big time coaches in college hockey history. But he was a driving force. He was such a decisive player. His speed was outstanding. His playmaking, his touch, a lot of set plays, so that you gotta credit his IQ for those. Multi-purpose, he could really do it all. So although he's just like the nonstop motor, but again, it just goes back to like this identity that the Flyers are trying to build. So maybe that is the new era, is just hard work combined with skill and kids who are hungry. And not hungry because they want a paycheck. I'm pretty sure Cole Knuble grew up well off, considering his dad was an NHL player for a long time. But it seems like he wants to create his own identity, his own reputation, his own legacy. So I'm a huge fan of his. I mean, he was outstanding for Notre Dame this year. Every time I watched him play, I didn't watch a lot of Big Ten this year because every Big Ten team had at least one kid who would be a notable free agent or a draft prospect. And every time I watched, Cole Knuble was one of the best players on the ice, almost like without fail.
Is it just the compete?
It's everything. It's speed, skill, compete, IQ. Really, I mean, really. Again, I'm not hyping this kid up because I get excited over prospects. Like it's just the very basic process of watching a game and extracting who the top players were in that game. And he was always one. He was always one of them. I never said, well, Knuble played like crap this game. Never once this season.
So he kind of made himself a bona fide NHL prospect
Well, he was good last year too. He just didn't. He had bad puck luck. I thought he was really good last year as a freshman. He had. I think the first half of the year, maybe he was intimidated a little bit by the whole college game, and he was adjusting really good, better in the second half, and he just took off in the sophomore year. So
yeah. That's good. That's a position the Flyers need. In fact, there's another center, Jack Berglund. He's had an injury-plagued year. I think he just came back.
But he got eliminated in the Allsvenskan playoffs. Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like a lost year for him in a lot of ways, but
I mean, I like him. I like him. So if I recall, he was drafted with the compensation pick from the Jay O'Brien,
second. I don't know if it was. Yeah, it was a second round pick. I know that much. Yeah, 51st overall.
So he was on a very good. He was the best player or one of the best players on a good team in the Swedish junior circuit, and because of his size and his multi-purpose ability, he was fast track to be like a full-time SHL guy. But like you said, he had injuries. I forgot that he was hurt. He would have made the World Junior team as probably the fourth line center and the PK1 guy, face-off specialist, but he was hurt, so he didn't play. But he's a guy that has ability. He's not just a big center who doesn't skate well. He is a creative 200-foot center. He's a guy that has ability. So he might be a long-term project. You probably don't want to think that considering where he was drafted, second-round pick. But, he's going to be in Europe. You're bringing a guy like Dorwart. And I didn't see where Dorwart played once he finished with college. But, I mean, he could play center. So, was Dorwart more like a contingency because of Berglund's injuries? It's going to be a long-term thing because Berglund likes to battle. He likes to get involved below the goal line, in the corners, in front of the net. So maybe that type of style, if he keeps getting hurt, might be a concern moving forward. But I wouldn't necessarily. I think next year is obviously going to be a bigger year for him, but he should be done with the Allsvenskan and with the J20. He should be in the SHL next year for Farjestad, unless he decides to move on to a different organization.
So, I mean, he's a big dude. I mean, I didn't realize how big he is. He's 6'4". He's already 2'9". And he's only 19. So, my question was going to be, does his blend to play because he plays so big? Is that what's getting him injured, or is he just fluke things?
I really don't know what's gotten him injured, to be honest with you. But it's just that you can't expect a guy who's that size, because he's not soft. He's not like some gentle giant. He is a guy that is involved. He blocks shots. So yeah, it could be a combination. I don't know what the injury situation is with him, but in a way, you kind of want to see that though. If you're going to get hurt, let it be because you were going full throttle and trying to help your team win. So,
yeah, gotcha. Another big flyer, future flyer, hopefully 6'4", 195. Still growing. Spencer Gill, right-handed shot defenseman, brings some offense, hopefully.
Yes.
He it looks like he's going to be a good pick and might have a good future down the road.
Well, yeah, he's a guy that, like I said previously, always involved in the offense or loves to be involved in the offense. So, with him, he's been playing big minutes in the Quebec League. I think he's with Rimouski, and they're contenders for the Quebec League crown. So he's going to be playing. I mean, the Quebec League was very good this year. A lot of good goalies, a lot of good prospects. There are a lot of interesting players. And, Briere being a Quebec League guy himself, that it was part of the process of it, not only just drafting him, but developing him as well. So I like that he's playing big minutes. Out of all the things that Gill does, I just like the fact that he does not hesitate when it comes to creating or involving himself in the offense. So you wouldn't think that a 6'3", 6'4" guy who's pretty good defensively is going to be more than any, like a crease clearer. But he is. He's a guy that always pushes the pace. It's like when you see let's say the wing collect the puck in the defensive zone, he leaves the slot, and not in like in a careless manner. He loves to be involved. He supports the puck, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And when you're cycling, when you dump and chase, it always helps having that extra body. He's not the kind of defenseman that's just going to park himself in the neutral zone or just wait at the right point or the left point and for the puck to squirt to him and throw it by high to low. Like he is weaving, and so there's definitely a lot of upside there with in terms of offense.
He seems like it could be kind of like that rover, not like as fast as Drysdale because he's a bigger guy, but he's more adventurous than a typical guy his size.
Yeah, and he's a right shot, so the right shot defenseman that the Flyers are accumulating, not as much like man, but I think I keep forgetting, is Southern a freaking lefty or righty? I keep forgetting if he's a lefty or righty. I know I'm sorry to put you guys on the spot, but
no, that's okay. Southern, I'm going to look that. I think he's a righty. I'm going to look that.
Yeah, he should. So he's a righty because he played with Cagnoni. Cagnoni was a lefty. So you have Southern is a mobile, offensive-minded right shot with size. Gill is a mobile, offensive-minded right shot defenseman with the size. Drysdale is a mobile right shot defenseman. So that it seems like that. That's what Bonk is another one. So there's going to be competition, though. That's the downside to it all. Is you're not going to have all of these kids in the NHL. Boom, boom, boom. There's your right side in the NHL level when the Flyers are good again. But he's got a lot to offer, I think.
Yeah. Two things. So the first thing is he going to be able to help them with their transition play? Is he going to be that? Okay, well, that's a good thing because they definitely need help with that. We haven't had a good transitioning D-man in a long time. And then also now for his other thing, remember, they don't all have to hit and play here. A lot of these can be used as currency to get other players, established players, maybe the veterans you need down the line. So I'm okay with all that. If it's a competition, brings out the best in people, sometimes the worst, but mostly the best. And I want these guys to not think they just have an easy job. And judging by the character of the guys that Briere's drafted, it doesn't seem like, or the organization has drafted, I should say, it doesn't seem like any of these guys sit on their ass laurels,
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, when you're drafting, it's not like the NFL, the NBA, where you are looking for immediate help. You are looking for the next difference maker on either side of the ball. And it's like jobs are at stake. Like if you hit on a third round pick who's a shutdown corner, right? And he outplays people at camp and he's a go-getter, then he's going to be playing every day. And then the onus is on everybody else, all the other cornerbacks, practice squad, you name it. And so now that impacts your ensuing drafts. You're like, well, look at this. We just struck gold with this shutdown corner. So we don't have to really worry about that position. Yeah, if he gets hurt, you want to have a backup. But, hockey isn't like that. Like you have to draft for not just the NHL team, but the AHL team as well. You need to have some type of level of competition where the top cheeses, right? The guys with all the notoriety and the ELCs aren't like, well, I got nothing to worry about. I'm going to get paid. I could take tonight off. I just don't feel like doing my best tonight. I'm not feeling up to it. I got other stuff going on. I got a meeting with my brand manager and my girlfriend's Instagram account has a photo shoot. Like all this stuff that goes on nowadays. Like there are legit dudes in the Flyer system right now that are going to be pushing hard to make the team. It's like I said, it's ripe for promotion because there's really, with all the movement going on with what the organization is doing right now. So a guy like Gill is like, hey, yeah, I was a, second round pick, but I'm backing it up. Bonk was a first round pick. He's backing it up. But then you have the other guys in the organization that are like, well, great. That's great where you were drafted, but you know what? we're all around the same age, and just bring your A game because I'm going to bring mine.
Yeah. Excellent. So then, for our next one, we I think we touched on it briefly, but let's go back to him. I guess Alex Chernick. I think he's. He was somebody I had in my notes when I went to development camp and I guess rookie camp this past season. I thought, wow. I mean, like, why is he standing out? And it looks like here's another thing: a hard worker. I was surprised by his speed. I don't know about his hockey IQ. But I think he just went to the Phantoms now, right? I think he's down with them now. So what can we expect from this? Is he a tweener or?
Yeah, I like the fact that he's played against adults for a while now. So I don't think the transition to the AHL, when you watch Allsvenskan, there's a drop in quality. It's not like, well, he's playing against 27-year-olds and 29-year-olds. So, there's a skill disparity from the second division in, let's say, Sweden or Russia or the Czech Republic versus the elite league, right? The elite league that where everybody wants to end up. So I think with Chernick he's always playing with these second division teams, and he never really got a full taste of SHL action. But at the same time, he's like 19, 12. He's 20 years old, soon to be 21, I think. And with him, it's the skill, the playmaking, short distance passing, stick handling, deceptive speed, helping out in the power play, pretty good competitiveness. So you have a skill element there, but also the fact that he's played against physical. That's the one thing about the Allsvenskan too, is that it's physical. So an aggressive forecheck is aggressive forecheck. I don't care what level you're at. If someone is 6'2", 190, 200 barreling towards you, that's going to, it's going to wake you up. So he's a guy that I trust with the puck. And he's the kind of guy that will make money with a, let's say, center who's a net front presence with good hands for deflections. He'll make money playing alongside, let's say, an offensive minded defenseman who's likes to get involved off the cycle. He's a good seam passer. Like the touch he puts on in open ice, on the rush, he'll make clean, smart passes. So, yeah, I mean, he's a pretty good pick. I kind of like him. I mean, I like a lot of the Flyers picks, but again, with him, the experience with playing against men is probably the most significant. It's probably going to come out and just play in the AHL.
So the next person we're talking about, the Flyers took him in the second round in 23. It's the first goalie they took out of, I think, 2 or 3 that year season. But Carson Bjornsson, I know he's done his season now, and they were gonna send him to the Phantoms, but he came to Philly. He was in the press box the other night. It sounds like he's a little banged up, so they're not even going to try to send him to the Phantoms this year. Let him heal, and then just start him with the Phantoms next year. I think he's one of those people. I think that the goalie spot in Philadelphia is wide open for him. I think he has a good chance. And obviously, we're going to talk about Zavaragin down the line, but I mean, Carson, he's somebody who can make a difference within a year or two.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy. Let me be honest with you. I thought he should have been a lot better in junior than he was. He didn't play for a real weak program. He played for Brandon, and Brandon's always pretty fairly competitive. But he's the kind of guy where it's he's heard the criticisms about his play in the postseason. He's heard his criticisms about his late season, regressions, that he's going to show up and, make it's like a clean slate, like the junior thing is done. I didn't agree with where he was taken. I would have definitely taken Zavaragin over him. I think that's how I had it ranked to begin with. The issue with Bjornsson is going to be competition, though, because he's got to face. You got Kolosov and Zavaragin already there. Zavragin's the best, probably the best European goalie prospect on the planet, and Kolosov is already experienced in the NHL. So Bjornsson is going to have that, I guess if you want to call it a disadvantage, but the advantage is that he will be at some point with Lehigh Valley. He will be playing significant minutes. So what we're looking at, though, is consistent quality starts, right? I'm not saying he's got to stop 98% of his shots every game, 93% of his shots every game, but just stop with the barrage that melts him down. That like he maybe it's a mental thing, I don't know. He had his best year this year out of any of his years, but it was his 4th year in the league, in a junior league. So you're wondering, like, okay, was this a situation where he just got used to the shooters and was in his comfort zone and etc., or did he really make adjustments and improve? I didn't see him enough to figure out. But when I looked at him in the postseason, I'm like, oh, here we go again. So, but again, he played. I'm surprised he didn't play for Canada at the World Juniors.
Yeah,
because he played well at the camp.
He's only 19. He's still got a little growing into maturity, I guess, to do. So it's not something you can just write off right now. I mean,
no, absolutely not.
And Kolosov, we don't even know his future with the team anymore. It's getting weird.
And remember, we don't know exactly like when Zavragin's going to decide to come over. So it looks like he could have at a minimum, the backup job in Lehigh Valley for at least the next 2 years.
Yeah. If I could interject one thing, according to Anthony Sanfilippo on his Snow the Goalie podcast, it is his belief that Alexei Kolosov is done with the Flyers organization after this season.
Really?
Yeah. He doesn't want to play in the AHL where he actually belongs. He wants to be in Belarus. I guess they could still keep his rights, but he thinks eventually they will move on.
So that works out for that works out for Bjornsson beautifully then. But
if ASF is right. So just
he's going to have to deliver though.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So someone to me that's been a little bit of a disappointment, Samu Tuamala. Tuamala. Sorry.
Yeah.
For me, I expected a lot more at this level now. Now that he's got like a full year in Lehigh with him, he's not getting any younger. He's already 22. I fear that he might be one of those career AHLers, or he'll probably end up going back to home country.
Well, I mean, I don't know the extent of his injury. With his situation, he was so good last year. And he was really good the year before in Finland. So there's definitely an element of dynamism with him because he's quick. And he's also, even though he's wiry, he's physical. He's willing to get involved physically, forecheck. And he's got a heck of a shot, too. So, but is he obviously Michkov getting drafted and then delivering instantly? That position's taken care of. And Tuamala being a right shot, right wing, there's going to be people, whether they be left shots or right shots. I think the Flyers in their mind have an established grouping of wings that it's going to really be a dog eat dog kind of a competition, and only the strong will survive. So the key for him is to get healthy. But let's not forget that there were many nights where he was Lehigh Valley's only like noticeable player. Not just with scoring, but you're like counting on him to make things happen, and he usually did. So I'm a big fan of his. I'm not going to close the book on him just yet. The only real issue is going to be just the overall depth. Now, a third year in the AHL isn't the end of the world. Is he NHL ready? Again, we don't know what the Flyers are going to do this offseason. So again, if it's one of those seasons where they're just doing auditions from training camp all the way up until the end of the season next year, that he's the kind of guy that's going to show up and you're like, oh, wow, he was really good in his 10 games. And then the clock kind of resets. And now you're like, okay, he's back to within all good graces. And now we're going to consider him a potential, middle six type.
Yeah, I just maybe I expected too much after that one season, and I expected him.
And it's fair, but remember the enemy has a say too. Like they have a book on him. Yeah. The goalies have a book on him. All the opposing scouts have a book on him. So now he's going to have to adjust.
Yeah, I mean, he's been hurt most of the second half
Yeah.
of the season. So that, he had 32 points in 46 games. Still has that shot, has that speed. It's just, yeah, you wonder if he can progress past, a certain point. So,
Yeah.
we talked about Alex Bump, who I had listed at the fifth position there. Denver Borky coming off 19 points in 6 playoff games, just lighting it up after a slow start. Maybe a little disappointed they didn't make WJC, and maybe that affected him. You don't know, but he's he's part of a great program. What do you see with this player? Is this guy have an NHL future, or is this size going to hold him back?
No, I don't think the size is going to hold him back. It's just that there are a lot of players his type in the system already. So, we all look at the numbers, putting up huge numbers on a powerhouse program, probably one of the best. If you look at his 3 years with London, I don't know off the top of my head what their 1-loss record is, but they should have won the Memorial Cup last year if it wasn't for that fluke goal. And they're probably going to be the favorite. They should be the favorite to win it this year. It seems like that's the whole, intent. But London's drive this year is this year is a failure if London does not win the Memorial Cup. At least that's the way they should look at it. The question that we have to ask ourselves, that I often ask myself, is that if he played on a different team, what kind of player would we be getting? Would he put up the same amount of points? Probably not. That playing with Easton Cowan, playing with Sam Dickinson, playing with Bonk, Julian, that all helps. But with him, it's like we already know that if he is not scoring, he could still be a contributor. So I'm going to take his junior stats with a grain of salt, but at the same time, I am not going to close the book on him or dismiss his upside as a NHL player. I think his floor is checking line NHL player, not AHL. I think his floor, I think he's just going to will himself to the NHL. And, but again, he's just another wing that it's this crazy competition it's the Flyers' own doing. They've done nothing but draft. The majority of their picks have been wings for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So
now, does being a captain of the team, is that pull any credibility for him? Because that organization, if you're going to be captain, that they got to see something in you too. So that's
absolutely. Dale Hunter is the head coach. We all know who Dale Hunter is. Like, if he decides that you're not only good enough for his program, but good enough to be the captain, and a captain on a team that has multiple first-round picks, that says something about the player's character and his intangibles.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. His teammate, Oliver Bonk, appears to be assured to have an NHL future. It's just, what is the ceiling? And maybe I'm assuming too much with Oliver Bonk, but we haven't seen the offense as much this year. Maybe is he trying to work on some of the things defensively?
No, I think he's done with that league. It's been, like his role. He's a team first guy. Ideally you want to see him explode. Dickinson, though, has taken the offense to a whole new level this year. He's taken like 5 shots a game. So I think Bonk, he had, the World Junior situation, bad memories from that. Bad memories from the losing the Memorial Cup last year. So I think, and this is my opinion, I think that he is trying to just win. He wants to win that Memorial Cup. He hasn't really won anything. I mean, he won the OHL title, but with London, that's not really what it's like. The Yankees with baseball, or the Golden State with basketball. Like, if you don't win a championship, then we really don't care. Like, it's so that situation with London, I genuinely think, though, that he's ready for the next level. As far as like whether they use him on the power play, if he's going to be in the bumper position again, is he going to score 15 goals? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know at this point because, again, it's very competitive in the Flyers system. But I don't view his season as a failure because he regressed scoring-wise. Although that being said, he definitely hasn't regressed defensively. Like, he's the guy that matches up against the opposing top lines. Hunter clearly loves him. So you can make the argument that his stats decreased because he was, let's say, caring more about the defensive end, which, is commendable.
Sure. No, but top 4 future or maybe more
upside top 4. I don't think he'll ever be a number 1. He'll be a good safety net on a number 2 because he's a team first guy. If he's a bottom pairing guy on the right side, he's not going to be miscast. You can't say, well, he's a first round pick. First of all, I think the Flyers overdrafted him a little. Although I like the kid, he probably got drafted about 10, 15 spots too high. But with him, it's all about changing the culture, maturity. He's an NHL, his dad was in the NHL. So they want these professional types of prospects, and he's one of them. So I don't think it'll be a failure if he is only a 5 or a 6. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. Even though he was drafted pretty high, considering how good that draft was, and who they passed on to get him.
Yeah, everybody talks about Gabriel Perreault, but we'll just have to wait and see. Perreault's not exactly ready for the NHL, so that's a lot of that has to do with now. But he could be a good scorer down the road. So move on to the. Some people think this player should be the Flyers or is the Flyers' best prospect, but if he's not, he's real close. Igor Zavragin, you mentioned him earlier, one of the best goalies not in the NHL right now. What would you say about his performance this year and his prospects?
I mean, he became Scott's number 1 in the playoffs at 19, 20 years old. So there you go. I mean, how often does that happen? When you're in the KHL, he's just been, his numbers have been phenomenal. His numbers have been absolutely phenomenal. They're in line with all the great Russian goalies who came over and delivered. So, my gut feeling is that the Flyers see him as their future number 1. Mm-hmm. More so than any other goalie in the pipeline, more so than Urson, more so than Kolosov, more so than Fedotov, more so than Bjarnason. I think Zavragin is the guy that they're like, you know what? He's going to be Osher Sturkin. Now, Bobrovsky, Sorokin, like that's the what we're looking at more than likely. Is it going to work out exactly that way for the Flyers? I mean, they've had really bad luck with goalies for decades. But you can't blame the kid. He's done everything asked of him and then some.
Yeah, well, we can only cross our fingers with that because I think that the Hart was like a safety valve. It was like a good transition goalie. He was a solid player, and in combination with a guy like Urson, they had a pretty good situation, and that just blew apart for one reason or another. Whether it's they're passing one Bobrovsky or having Czechmanic freak out in the playoffs, whatever it is, the Flyers have not had anything going since Hextall's, I guess, his second year.
Yeah.
So
I really after Pelle Lindbergh, it's just been really that's what's crazy. It's almost like a curse where you're like, okay, we're set. You go from Bernie to with a gap.
Right. And then it was
Pete
Peters was pretty good. And then you had Billy Lindbergh and Bob Froese, and that was a good combination for a while.
And then even Hextall, but Hextall, I mean, after 87, and then a little 89, but still, again, like I think Zavragin, it seems like every 2 years, the Flyers have at least one guy that the fan base, and deservedly so, understandably is like, this is the guy. We have to have faith. And how the hell could you predict what the hell happened with Carter Hart? Because he was young when he had his best season. There's no reason to think that when Carter Hart was 27, 28, he wouldn't be a premier goalie. He was trending in that direction. So I think if the Russians are going to be that high on Zevragin, if Tretiak is going to be that high on Zevragin, then we should all be that high on him. I mean, again, 20 years old, he's playing for SKA in the playoffs. Doesn't matter really whether he does or in that postseason. That level of responsibility is very rare for a goalie that young to earn, and he earned it. He earned it, and he did it in a very short time frame.
All right, so one of the last and probably one of the most talked about draft picks. We're going to talk about Jet Luchenko here. He had a cup of coffee and, well, maybe even a lox and a bagel with the Flyers at the beginning of the season, but now, people had said he didn't really look too out of place, or was it the Flyers' desperation because they had no other options at center? Either way, he didn't look all that bad. So, considering his age, now he has his season. Now he's with the Phantoms, and they're saying, well, he's been kind of like quiet and unimpressive. But I've also heard other people on podcasts, respected people on podcasts, that say, well, he's somebody that's not going to just be a standout in AHL because it might not be as challenging for him. He's gonna have to go to the NHL to kind of get anything to really test him. So I don't know if I've ever believed that people just will get bored like that. I mean, obviously you have some huge exceptions, like somebody like, Mitchkov or number one pick that is NHL ready, and whether it's debatable and whether they should go right to the NHL. You can argue that all day. But I sit there and I look at this and I'm going, is there a reason for concern for Flyers fans, or is it just like normal growing process?
The concern should be, it's really a very basic thing. The concern should be that it should be the pressure of living up to not only the fact that he was drafted higher than expected, but he was drafted instead of someone that the fans may have wanted instead, right? So whether it be Zeev Boyum or, Hellenius. So that is the key. Like, it's a similar situation almost. Not right now, but it could be a similar situation with Montreal, with Mitchkov and Reinbacher, and that, the stories come out that, Mitchkov, they don't want to play for us. Like, whatever, dude, you still take them. Okay, I don't care. You still draft them, and you worry about everything else later on. But the Reinbacher was basically crushed mentally by the weight initially, by the weight of expectation, the hate mail. I think he deleted his social media. So you worry if and I don't think Luchenko has that kind of makeup. But, again, when he played for Guelph stunk, but he was their all-star. He was their everything. So he was fine in that environment. And he's only 19, and he got his taste of NHL activity. He earned it. But again, you have to worry about the pressure, right? So, was drafting him a response to losing Gauthier under the circumstances they lost Gauthier? I definitely think so. Because there definitely were centers available at, I think, what do they have? 12th overall before 11th overall before trading down. They had 12th overall. They had options to draft beyond or instead of Luchenko. And they decided to do that. And because fans, as usual, will always listen to the typical parroted echo chamber of draft discussion where, well, this is exactly what, I never heard of him, so he must stink. Where anyone who really followed the draft knew that, hey, Luchenko's pretty good, but that would be my only concern. The player himself is fine. The player himself is an elite passer. He's an excellent skater. He's got leadership qualities. He's good at faceoffs. He could, orchestrate a power play, which the Flyers, haven't been able to do in 5 years. So I'm not even really caring that much about what he does in the AHL, because think about it. If he has 12 points in 5 games, then everyone's going to be like, he's going to make the NHL next year and he's going to be a 40-point center. That's how the fan mind works. And that's really not how development works, though. With him, he's going to have benchmarks, right? Make Team Canada for the World Juniors, okay? Potentially make the team out of camp. If not, no big deal. Full season in the AHL. Play on the power play. and take it for that. Now, listen, the Flyers have a really good track record in recent years of hitting with their first round picks, right? Their first pick in 23 was Mitch Korb, 60-point season. Their first pick in 22 was Gauthier, 20 goals, 40 points. Not bad, right? As an NHL rookie, anybody would freaking take that. Okay. Yeah. Forster, late first round pick in 20, and you got 20 goals and 40 points out of him. And then if you want to count Bobby Brink, who was first round quality, you're getting a production out of him as well. And even Farabee and Frost, so like they get something out of their first round picks. They're getting results, not necessarily mind blowing. Okay, Mitch Korb. Okay, yeah. I mean, who knows what he's going to do next season and beyond. But so I think with Luchenko, whatever he makes his debut, 2026, 2028, and listen, if he's feeding pucks to Mitch Korb and Forster and Brink, I mean, he's going to get his points. He's an elite setup man for his age group. So, fans need to freaking chill. They need to chill sometimes and realize that these little mini glimpses at any level, we can extract whatever we want. We have the right to do that, but they're not really we need a full season from him at the AHL and NHL level to really understand and figure out what he's going to be. But I don't think he was necessarily to this day. I don't think he was he deserves to be called a bad pick because Boyum was dancing all over the place in his draft +1, and Hellenius was in the AHL, and I wouldn't really worry about that stuff.
I think the Flyers really got caught wrong-footed on that draft day. I think they figured that Sam Dickinson would be there. I truly think, I have nothing to back that up, but I really think they wanted Sam Dickinson.
But they needed both. All right, they needed a power play quarterback, offensive defenseman, and they needed a center. So I think the conventional wisdom would have told you that that they would attack both with the first round of last year, and they made the decision to trade, to use a center on one pick, trade down, get more capital, and then trade the other first round pick, which in hindsight looks smart, right? Because that would have been like it was like the 31st pick, wasn't it? And they traded it, and now it looks like, I mean, I don't think Edmonton's going to be back in the Stanley Cup final. That's just my prediction.
Yeah, right.
Hey, look at that. Like you're getting a guy that's about 10 slots higher in the first round. So I think with the 7 picks they have this year in the first 2 rounds, they'll knock out both requirements for center and power play quarterback.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, I think Luchenko, I'm just concerned about his offensive productivity and being able to generate his own shot, and he just needs time. And I just don't want him on the roster next year because he's too young to be in the AHL. Even though physically I think he can handle it next year, the rules are the rules. I say send him back and hopefully negotiate his way out of Guelph, let him play with better players and have more opportunities with more support. And I think it would help build his offensive confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I keep forgetting about this stupid frickin' CHL-AHL rule, which is the dumbest thing. I can't wait till they get rid of that.
Antiquated,
yeah, but the it just makes no sense. I mean, it's for the CHL to make money. It's the only reason why they have it. But I think that if next year goes back to what I said earlier about if next year is a complete and utter disaster for the sake of tanking, for lack of a better term, for McKenna. That we're going to probably get we're going to see. We have to entertain the possibility of Luchenko making the team out of camp again. Because remember, Lawton's traded, right? There's going to be, so who knows what else they have in store with the center ice position, and give Luchenko, I think, a chance. So what do you burn a year of his ELC? I mean, let him play, because again, with the. With Barkey and all these guys returning for their third and fourth CHL seasons, I'm going to say this. The CHL is not getting the results that we expected from its high-end picks, right? We're seeing the college kids I mean, for the European kids they're delivering sooner, right? So if you look at like the top 20 score, I mean, Celebrini, instant. Lane Hudson, instant. Mitchkov, instant. I mean, Bedard is the exception, but Fantilli, instant. Leo Carlson, like, where are the CHL kids, the top kids? They're going right back to junior, and they're scoring 9 million points. And then when they come, so you have your Wyatt Johnsons, you had your Logan Stankovens, like, that's fine. Seth Jarvis, these are good examples. But, Lafreniere, Byfield, these guys are supposed to be elite players at this point. They're not. No matter how long Drysdale, remember the discussion was Drysdale versus Sanderson. Drysdale was a CHL guy. Sanderson was a college NTDP guy. Right. I had Drysdale ahead of Sanderson. And look what Sanderson's doing and look what Drysdale's doing, with all due respect to Drysdale. I know he's, So I think the CHL kids, it's almost like doing them a disservice by sending them back to junior, but they have no choice. They have to. So it might be in the Flyers' best interest to say, you know what, screw it. He's a first-round pick. You're playing in the NHL next year. I don't care what happens to you. Okay. Look at a guy like Brett Howden. He's a 20-goal scorer on a cup contender. You know what I mean? That guy was a fourth-line guy, 6 goals here, 2 goals there, and now he's an everyday contributor, 20-goal scoring, bottom 6 center on a Stanley Cup contender in Vegas. He won a cup with them. So, yeah, they got to do something about it, I think, at some point with this freaking rule. But as far as Luchenko goes, 23, 24 years old, that's when I really care about, what he'll be doing.
Gotcha. So before we wrap this up and go to the final topic of the night, among Massimo Rizzo, Ethan Sampson, Jacob Gauthier, Devin Kaplan, Carter Sutherland, who we did mention before, and John Randall Avon, are there any surefire, in your opinion, of course, NHL contributors, or do you think they're basically either not going to make it or only AHL?
I think for the most part, they're all going to be AHL, but Kaplan is a guy that I would keep an eye on because he's a specialist, right? He's got size, physicality, he's got the effort, and he's a defensive shutdown type. So, playing for a program like BU, he stays within himself. All right, he could be the next Bo Gruel or one of these other, guys that I thought were really strong 200-foot types, specialists in the defensive end. But he's a wing. And so, again, like I said, a lot of these wings the Flyers have drafted, like the Tuomalas, like the Bumps, if they're not scoring, you're not going to have them on the fourth line. So a guy like Kaplan will not only work his tail off, but also give the coaching staff an option for penalty killing, late close, matching up against the top line, things like that. So I think from having a wing that has that skill set, that package of size, strength, intimidation, and just really good defensive play coming from a really good college program, I think it's going to be really appealing.
Maybe a Garnet Hathaway kind of replacement down the road.
I mean, yeah. I mean, just in general, because he has size, he's bigger than the other 5'10", 5'11" guys that could over the same thing. But, you're looking at add 25, 30 pounds of muscle by the time he's 23, 24 years old. Well, maybe 15, 20 pounds of muscle. Then you're looking at, then you're looking at like a real menace to play against. More so in the checking sense than the goon physicality sense.
Gotcha. So people have to check you out at thedraftanalyst.substack.com. And I wanted to close the night, Steve, with this article as we move to the draft and we get an early look at maybe like the top 10. Obviously the Flyers have 3 first-round picks this year, and they might try to. It's tough really to trade into the first round, it would seem. So they're going to pick in the range of anywhere from like 4 to 9, depending on how the lottery plays out and their schedule. So you had an interesting article that you called 2025 draft top tier stats breakdown. And I was wondering if people go to that, and of course it's a paid subscription, which is worth every freaking penny. Again, that's thedraftanalyst.substack.com. What are you trying to put across that with that piece in terms of, you were talking about James Higgins and how you can misread the player just by looking at his stats and getting out one of those stat comparison charts between other players at comparable points in their career.
Well, the problem that I've encountered in my 11 years of doing this is that there is a disconnect between the people who cover the draft and I think the scouting community, because the scouts don't care about stats nearly as much as the media and the fans. So the fans will look at raw production, right? Raw production. Okay. Goals, assists, and points without any context whatsoever. If you don't score as high as this guy, then you're not going to be as good as him. And we all know that is complete nonsense. That, yes, the top tier guys, the Austin Matthewses and the McDavids and the Patrick Kanes and the Jack Eichels and the Paul Correas, they all put up amazing numbers and they lived up to them. But in this particular draft, we don't have a runaway number one like we had with Celebrini last year. Why was Celebrini number one overall? Well, he was not only producing on a elite level as a college freshman, but he looked like he was the best player in the damn draft. With this year, it's a little bit more cloudy because, you have guys like Higgins, who was the front runner in the beginning of the season, and everybody expected him to put up the same type of numbers as Celebrini, and he didn't. And oh my goodness, it's the end of the world. Not realizing that Jonathan Taves, Brady Tkachuk, Tage Thompson, Kent Johnson, these guys all put up similar numbers, similar production rates, if not worse. And then on top of that, Michael Misa had 135 points. He must be amazing. Not so fast. Okay, Misa, with the eye test, had a very wishy-washy tail end to the season. And on top of that, I found out that the majority of his assists are not these amazing setups like a Luchenko would give or a Michkov would give. They were more like of the handoff variety and playing with a guy like Zane Parekh on the point and a skilled winger like Chernyshov on his side. That Misa was the beneficiary of a lot of handoff assists, not necessarily creating or driving possession. So again, there's so much that goes into analyzing a draft class, but I go well beyond. So my thing is the eye test above everything else, but the stats need to be contextualized. So we need to know that in college hockey, the combined goals per game is about 2 full goals less than what is delivered in the OHL. So there you could deduce that if Misa played in the college game and Higgins was in the Canadian Hockey League, the numbers would be almost identical. Like, you'd have Misa averaging about a point a game and Higgins averaging 2 points a game. But that's not how the draft class is being presented this year and in years past as well. So that was more like, everybody, here you go. Here's proof that there's really no one metric that says that, well, because this guy has more points than the other. Like Frondell, for example. He had the second highest points per game average in Allsvenskan history in terms of first-year draft eligible. The only guy that outproduced him was Elias Pettersson, right? But, the guy, he was way, way, way ahead of David Pasternak and Jesper Bratt, who are perennial 75, 80-point guys in the NHL. So, I mean, who was better this year, Pasternak and Bratt or Pettersson? Bratt and Pasternak were better than Pettersson, but Pettersson had the better draft year numbers. So there's a lot. Just the whole point again is just to kind of like convince people that you're always going to get the very basic assessment from mainstream coverage, and it's going to be based on, they're always going to point to the stats, and the stats. And I'm here to say it's part of the evaluation, not the end all be all. And it's unfortunate that it's not like college football or college basketball where like, hey, we see it front and center. We see it in the bowl games. We see it in the BCS. We see it in during March Madness and the conference tournaments. You just get that feel. Whereas people are like, well, I don't care that James Higgins is an electrifying talent and broke Kucherov's record at the U18 Worlds. He didn't produce as much as Celebrini, so he's going to be a bust. Like, shoot me. Like, when I hear that, I really, it blows my mind that people actually, that comes out of people's mouths. So, really, this draft class, when I heard that it was being called weak, I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. Based off of what? The Hockey News draft preview, I own every single one of them, and it always talked out of both sides of its proverbial mouth, where if they'll say that this year's draft is weak, and then the next year they'll say, and the recap of last year's draft, which was very strong, yeah, in retrospect. So,
Right.
And it's always they're quoting scouts. So this scout says that, this scout says, if I listen, I got a lot of free time on my hands. I've been going through all these Hockey News draft previews. I go to newspapers.com, Google newspapers, and I am pulling all the quotes from every, I'm sure I've been guilty of it too. All the quotes where it's like, oh, I don't see Matt Sundin as a franchise player. Now, Dave Chazowski, he's a franchise player and blah, blah, blah. These Europeans. I mean, well, think about what we had to deal with Mitchkov and how it was like nonstop damage control by guys like myself saying like, are you high? You're going to say that Mitchkov has character issues and he's not a good teammate and he doesn't play defense. Like 2 years later, look who's laughing now. 60 freaking point rookie season, one of the hottest selling jerseys in the league. Yeah. So, again, it's frustrating, but at the same time, it sharpens my ability to give a proper assessment because I can give it both the eye test, the typical scout's perspective, although I'm not a scout, and the context from the stats and the production. How are the points scored? When were they scored? Did they load up against lesser teams? How they play in the playoffs? Misa was horrendous in the playoffs. Did you guys know that? You probably know that because you read my article. Misa was a disaster in the playoffs, and he got scratched in Game 5. They lost in 5 games. He got scratched in Game 5, and no reason was given. They said, well, it was an undisclosed injury. And then now magically he's on the camp roster of a Team Canada's U18 team. So if he's hurt, he wasn't healthy for an elimination game, but he's going to be healthy enough to play for Team Canada. And so, and again, he was outplayed significantly. And if Mitchkov played this way in his draft year, they would have said, rank him 25 or 30th. Actually, I think some people did. So yeah.
I have one last question. Okay. So since you brought up Misa and so the Flyers, let's just say the Flyers get lucky and they draft number 1. They win the lottery or even number 2. Doesn't matter. They get lucky enough to do that. Do you think that they would be drafting? I mean, they both need, here's a draft where there's enough decent centers and defensemen higher up the rung here where they can address a need. Which need do you think that they would address first? Would it be the center or would it be the defenseman?
I would take Schaefer. I would take Schaefer. Yeah.
Now, if they still get stuck at 7th, though, 6th, 7th,
then don't if they don't get the first overall, or if Schaefer's not available to them, whatever slot they pick, then do not draft a defenseman. That, with all due respect to Mertka and Hensler and
that was going to be my question.
Smith, no, do not. I will have no problem going public and crucifying Briere and Flahr if that's what they decide to do. That, well, we skipped out on Boyle. So, Jackson Smith, no. Then you trade down. Jackson Smith also had a horrible postseason. Mertka was pretty good. But again, there are a lot of defensemen in this draft that you could say, you know what, he's going to have a bright future. It's not a defense heavy draft.
Yeah.
But there is a distinct separation from Schaefer and everybody else. More so than Dahlin to Buchwist and I'm talking draft year wise, Quinn Hughes and Dobson and Bouchard. That was more like it was a little bit tightly packed. Whereas with this one, there's a huge gap. From Schaefer's ready for the NHL right now, in my opinion. As long as he heals up,
Wow.
Broken collarbone. He could play in the NHL as early as next year. No 9-game nonsense. Play him right now, bottom pairing, 5-6, whatever, but still put him in the NHL. He's that good in every aspect, and he's got great character. There's a lot of things to love about him. But if he's not there for you, there's no defenseman getting drafted at 6 or 7 or 8 or 9. Any team that does that is running an insane risk of passing on a outstanding. Listen, the way the teams have been drafting the last 5 years, it's almost unprecedented since the merger. Talking about the you guys know when I say the merger,
yeah.
WHA, NHL merger, that usually used to be about 60-40 forwards to defensemen, right? Rarely would you have more defensemen taking the first round than forwards. In the last 5 years, it's been the higher disparity than ever. 70% forward, 30% defenseman. And that's including last year where we had all these defensemen taking the first round. That's including. So I am of the opinion that you will find good NHL defensemen in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5. The elite forwards, they're going to be in round 1. Do not miss on that chance just because you have a need or a kid interviewed really well. So my opinion is the Flyers have to address center ice. Absolutely, without a doubt. If you don't get the first overall pick and Schaefer's gone, then you start targeting centers. And there's a lot of them, right? There's Misa, Higgins, there's Frondell, there's Desnoyers. Then you have the other tiers go with guys like Martin, Jake O'Brien.
Or is he too hurt?
Who?
McQueen. Roger McQueen.
Don't touch him. Don't touch him. No. Flyers already learned their lesson with Patrick. Do not touch him.
Okay.
So, listen, I'm sure McQueen's a great kid. And the Flyers, like to draft out of the WHL every now and again. The Flyers should not. McQueen should go to a team with multiple first-round picks and then in the second half of the first round. After what happened with Caden Lindstrom right now, you can't take that risk. We're talking about serious injuries that are, Morgan Riley missed a chunk of his draft season. He turned out okay. Barzal had I think a dislocated kneecap.
Yeah.
And it was a cause for concern. Kid turned out fine. But with backs and groins and head stuff, no. And neck, that whole business is something that, as much as I was never really, to be fair, I was never really high on McQueen like everybody else was. I don't know, the scout poll that Bob McKenzie did in the beginning of the season, a scout said he was the number 1 overall pick. I'm like, no, he's not. All right, on what planet? Like, and we're seeing it right now, that the grouping, the tier among forwards, it includes Frondell, Martone, Misa, Higgins. If you want to throw Desnoyers in there, fine.
Eklund,
Victor Eklund, but he's more of like a straight, pure wing. You know what I mean? And the Flyers definitely don't need. I don't think the Flyers need his type. You know what I mean?
So if Frondell isn't there, then they probably pick up Desnoyers.
That's definitely a possibility. Again, I definitely do not draft a wing if I'm the Flyers. There's good ones.
Yeah.
I don't draft a wing. Now, Misa is an elite goal scorer. I think he's the best goal scorer in the draft class, but I worry about everything else. I really do. After seeing him the last couple of months against really good teams, what happened in the postseason was very disconcerting. Very disconcerting. Now, if he's hurt and he bounces back and he has this great U18 Worlds, if he plays, all right, the recency bias is going to help him. But I think that what the Flyers are looking for, you're looking at Higgins, Frondell, Desnoyers, and then if I'm drafting a winger, though, I'm drafting Martone or Carter Bear. But he has the issue with Frondell, though, is also he had a knee issue earlier in the year, but he looks fine now. He's playing great in the playoffs.
He's past that. Yeah. It's tough keeping track. By the way, Ivan Demidov with a goal and an assist tonight for the Canadiens.
Ooh, there we go.
Yeah, in fact, he got an assist on the first goal and scored his first NHL goal in the first period about 7 minutes later for the Canadiens. So
good for him. He was. I think I had him third. I might have had him second. It went Celebrini, Salayev, Demidov, like something like that kind of order. Chicago passing on him for Levchinov. I know that they think that Levchinov is going to be a star there in Chicago, but Montreal, I really do hope that they get something out of Demidov, and it's gonna be an interesting discussion with Flyers fans over Michkov Demidov, but
yeah, that's just generated by Montreal fans, really.
Yeah.
That's a one-way. That's a one-way war.
Yeah, Michkov. He basically right now is the standard for Demidov is a 60-point rookie season. That's the standard.
Yeah.
If he doesn't meet it, then he's got work to do.
Yeah.
It's did you ever watch a Big Bang Theory?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You know how what do you call it? Had the feud with Will Wheaton, and Will Wheaton didn't know about it. Sheldon had it, so that's kind of the same way. We don't know about it either. So it's the same principle.
Yeah.
They carp online. But so just before we call it, as far as centers, I don't know if you mentioned Jake O'Brien, Caleb Denoure, Braden Coots. Is he? We got a guy named Coots.
I would say Cole Reshny over Coots. That's for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because we already got a Coots, right? So
yeah.
We already got a Desnoyers too. So
yeah. Carter Bear.
He's a wing, but he had his Achilles tendon sliced by a skate cut, so he's done.
Oh, okay. So it's basically, to me, it just seems like they need to get either Higgins, Frundell, or Misa. And Misa has, is Misa the third-ranked center for you?
Yeah. I have him at 6. I put Bear ahead of him before Bear got hurt, and I'm not going to punish Bear for getting a skate cut injury. Misa's the issue I have with Misa is I just don't think he was much of a play driving type, and I went into great detail explaining why. But again, his postseason was very concerning. It's just a 5-game series, defending Memorial Cup champions. He was a big zero in every area. There was nothing really redeeming about his postseason. If he was hurt, he has to basically make up for it by playing out of his mind at the U18 Worlds. But let's not forget that Higgins a year prior to that smashed the record. So that's the standard. Higgins is too old to play in that tournament. So I would say that, to be honest with you, I would say that if they didn't draft Luchenko, I would say it would be a slam dunk to take a guy like Higgins. But you do have to be concerned about having 2 sub-6-foot centers as your potential 1 and 2. That maybe Frondell being 6'1", 195, you could get like a Jonathan Taves, JT Miller type. There's your nice complimentary, your 1-2 punch, right? And again, I'm just thinking out loud long term. With Higgins is a pure setup man. Luchenko's a pure setup man. If that's what they want, be my guest. But I think Frondell or Desnoyers would probably make more sense to me.
Yeah.
I more so than Nitz or Higgins.
Well, yeah, right now they're 5th. If they held their position, if I'm reading the standings right, they're 5th, and then it depends on the lottery. So number 5, that's in the territory. So,
yep.
Steve, we have kept you for a long time. I really do appreciate it so much. People need to go to thedraftanalyst.substack.com. What can you tell the people about your draft guide coming up and your dates of interest for the people that want to consume your material?
Well, unfortunately, I've been starting my draft report. I've done it for 10 years now. So I'll post the link when it's done. It's usually done around like late May, early June. But that's going to consume all my time. In the meantime, I'll be doing some mock drafts, and I'm working on my final rankings right now. Be like a top 150. Just remember, my rankings are more like my favorite players, and in addition to like how I see their NHL careers when all is said and done, not how it's going to go, or like I don't have agents in my ear. I don't have anyone from the leagues telling me like this and that. I go by what I see, call like I see it. So there'll be a lot of stuff, team-oriented stuff, team draft previews. I'll try to do more podcasts myself. But all that stuff can be found on my Substack. Unfortunately, I keep it behind a paywall because I want to keep it private as possible. It might not make a lot of sense, but I like to make sure that, the analysis is kind of, private and only available to a select group of people.
So
like
if
you
they
guys
want to plagiarize it, at least they got to pay for it.
Well, that's the thing too. I've had the issues with that in the past too, so I had no choice.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say I blame you if that's been the case.
Excellent. Thank you again.
Brother, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. And we hope maybe after the draft, we'll have you back on. We'll get your analysis.
No problem. Just say the word.
Perfect.
All right. You got it. Thanks so much, Steve.
All right. Take care, guys. Have a good night.
All right. You too. Okay. Well, Chef, this is going to be our longest show. I
know.
I didn't want to leave tonight without mentioning just a couple items, and then we'll give it a wrap. So just to clarify, I said earlier about Kolosov that Anthony Sanfilippo thinks he's going home. I talked about Mike Sealski in an article that was referenced by Kevin Kurz today, that the Flyers are definitely going to be trying to solve their goaltending problem somehow. To me, it doesn't seem as if the Flyers are going to kick the can down the road and try to go McKenna, which is ridiculous. They have virtually no chance. I mean, Tim Murray ruined his general managing career hoping he would get McDavid. He got Eichel and he didn't know what to do with him. And, of course, the head coaching thing, I'm not thinking it's impossible that Pat Ferschweiler could be a choice, but I still think it's Rick Tocchet. So we'll have to see.
We'll see.
And good for Tyson Forster. Ray's on a run, right?
Yep.
At the hat trick against the Rangers, and a couple more. So he's doing well. We're going to do a wrap-up show sometime next week. So, and for Ivan Fedotov is the Flyers Masterson Trophy nominee, and he has he can make a great TV movie out of that. But they'll just have to do a little Hollywood version where crazy.
It'll make a great TV movie. Maybe not a great NHL goalie, but a great TV movie.
Exactly. I think it's more than that. It's a shame. Great guy. Yeah. I mean, you got to root for him. And before we get out of here, the NHL lost two well-known members of the fraternity. I guess you call it Greg Millen, the NHL goalie and analyst, I think, for Sportsnet. He passed away suddenly. And, of course, Ray Shero, Fred Shero's son, that he passed away. And from everything I've heard, he was about as amiable, well-liked, and respected and hockey executive that you could ever ask for. And it really, really was a gut punch for a lot of people that are adjacent to the Flyers. And, of course, the Penguins. He was a cup-winning GM. And, of course, he was affiliated with the New Jersey Devils. So, it's a tough thing. We offer our condolences to Greg Millen and Ray Shearer's family. So before we call it a night. So Chef, we got a lot on our table tonight and going forward. Danny Briere's got a lot on his table. Any final thoughts?
Well, my final thought is I say this: if they get one, they're going to go for the defenseman. If they manage to win the draft, I don't think he'll be there even if they get two. But if they do, settle where they are, I think they pick up Desnoyers. So, and if you want to argue with me about it, fine, argue with me about it. Catch me on Chef the Left B on Twitter. Okay. You got it. And of course, you can follow us on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Blue Sky. We're at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. We're also on Independent Forum Getter at O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puckcast. You can follow us on several podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon Audible. And of course, we're on YouTube and Facebook. Just type in there O&B Puckcast and we should pop right up. And if you could follow or subscribe, whatever applies to your platform, we really do appreciate it. It'll help move us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcast. Been a long one tonight. We hope you're still with us. We hope you appreciated the information Steve gave out. We had a really good time. So until next time, everybody, thanks for listening and take care.
Hey, everybody. It's Isaiah. Just reminding you about Jim's South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia, PA. They're back. That's right. After the fire, they've returned. And now you have, in the 40-year tradition of Philly cheesesteaks, Jim's South Street down on 400 South Street in Philly. If you're down there, check it out. The finest cheesesteaks, hoagies, and fries in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. You know you want one. And if you're down there, if you live down there, of course, you can use Grubhub or DoorDash, whatever it takes. Jim South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia. They're back. Get one soon.